James for live from Pasadena Media Studios. Get ready for more piercing and provocative. The conversation live starts now. And welcome to another episode of The Conversation Live. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. Coming up today, cannabis is a discussion. Shaun Szameit is in the seat. Shaun's no stranger to The Conversation Live. He's been here a time before, and Shaun is really pushing for social equity in the cannabis space. We want to unpack what's happening currently in the city, also get his perspective on why social equity is important. Let's go ahead and welcome Shaun into the seat. Shaun.
Good morning, James. How are you?
Hey, man. Good morning. Thanks for being here. I know you got a busy schedule. You're out your facility, which I'm looking forward to coming and visit in Baldwin Park.
Yeah,
well, you're no stranger in the cannabis space here in Pasadena. At one time, before the regulation kind of got set in place, and it was kind of this vague regulation, if you will. City hadn't adopted things, but you were operating here in Pasadena. Let's catch the audience up with, who you are, how we end up here today.
Well, my name is Shaun Szameit. I'm a cannabis industry professional that began in the industry in 2006 and was one of the pioneers of licensing in California. Since closing down in 2018 in Pasadena, I went on and built and sold a dispensary in the city of Cathedral City, and additionally have received licenses for cultivation, manufacturing, and distribution. And currently I'm in the process here in the city of Baldwin Park, building a 21,000 square foot pharmaceutical grade manufacturing facility. The beauty of this facility is it'll serve as a catalyst to provide opportunities to individuals that are trying to break into the cannabis space and build their own product lines. A little bit about the history. Cannabis was made legal in California medicinally in 1996 by the voters, and I began my career roughly in 2006. I opened up my storefront in Pasadena in December of 14, and Pasadena was historically in opposition, despite the majority of the voters approving it medically and subsequently for recreational purposes in 2016.
Right. I mean, you weren't. Yeah, you did close ultimately, but I mean, you had a little bit of encouragement, and I think that's a kind of mild way of saying it. But you faced. Look, I mean, I'm gonna just say it straight. There were dozens of cannabis retail operations open within the city.
Yes.
But you, in your store, your location actually was raided by the police department, which to me seemed a bit draconian in the approach of the city. What was that experience?
It was unfortunate. It's in the past, and I think the beauty of regulations are that the future is really what matters, and we're at an opportunity now to really change what historically has been done wrong, and maybe follow the likes of other cities that have done it successfully, such as Oakland. But yeah, we were shut down in December of 2018, and that was an unfortunate situation. I believe that Pasadena has designed a flawed ordinance that the voters approved because it was the only option available, and the city stood behind what they were saying was following the will of the people or voter intent. However, if you look deeper into the ordinance, it's clearly that it only catered to outsiders and really was not presented to the voters in the intent that it was rolled out. And yes, I feel that I was treated unfairly in the city, and I'm prepared
let's talk about like the ordinance a little bit, and I think one of the things that the residents, in the audience may have been confused about is the up to 6, right? Like up to 6 retail locations per district, right? But there's setbacks that are in place that really prohibit or make it really hard to find that location.
Correct. Yeah, the setbacks were beyond the state requirements, and they were designed to essentially ban the use. The staff clearly has stated that there was only the ability to get up to 3 locations, and so if the intent was to have up to 6, there was no intention of actually creating the possibility to roll that out. There's a few setbacks that are not required by the state, such as the kind of extensive residential setback that they've incurred. Additionally, they have a large setback between uses. So the stores have to be, at this point, 600 feet apart. They have to be 1,000 feet from a residential zone. They have to be 1,000 feet from a school, a church, when typically it's a 600-foot setback. So, and additionally, by only allowing one per district, they kind of created an impossible scenario.
What do you mean impossible?
Well, the districts are not created equally. One district doesn't have a public school. One district has more auto body stores, one district. And so if you look at just that inherently, that would lead to one district has more industrial space and one has more retail space. So those would lead, based off their setbacks, to be the only options for the city to find a license. So if you're only allowing one per district, you're really creating an impossible situation.
And then even when you look at District 1, which is like Councilmember Hampton's district, in Pasadena, I mean, we're dense anyway, and really on top of one another. But there's not really, if you are following the ordinance and the setbacks, there's not really a location that fits.
There isn't. No, there isn't at all. The churches is a big issue as far as I think the setbacks to create feasible locations. And I think the city needs to look at it more independent of those uses and about creating opportunity. Additionally, local inclusion, because the current individuals that were licensed are, they're working towards their best interest, and they have no incentive to work with local inclusion.
No, I mean, and I definitely want to get to that part, because I've looked at the applicants, I've looked at, the corporations. And when you look at these applicants and these corporations, I mean, I've gone completely down the rabbit hole through LinkedIn, through available social media channels. And one, they don't look like me at all. And for the most part, I mean, it's a corporate industry now, and folks have big box retail experience. And that's not an indictment on an individual's career or, professions or whatnot. But when we're looking at that inclusion, but Councilmember Hampton has suggested, I mean, he's not a proponent for recreational usage. However, he recognizes that the voters have spoken. This is the will of the people. And it's for adults to make their own choices. But he's also said we need to start the process all over. So what does that process look like if there were a restart?
Well, I think a restart would be difficult. I believe that there's an ability to amend at this time. And I think the timing's pretty perfect. The current individuals that were licensed are in need of regulatory changes to be able to open. And also at the same time, it's a perfect time to insert local inclusion and some form of social equity, an amendment.
Let's talk about that local inclusion and social equity. First, the social equity. What exactly does that mean?
Well, if you go to PasadenaEquity.com, we have laid out essentially the precursors of an ordinance that we would be unveiling if the city did not act. But essentially, it starts with at the root of residency, and there's a couple ways to look at it. There's individuals that have been in districts that have been disproportionately impacted, and there's also arrests that were disproportionately given. So we're looking at trying to make it to where it is not how it was done in LA, to where it was kind of a farce, and there's individuals just representing others, and the licensees are kind of put in a precarious position. They were required to acquire a location and become essentially indebted to investors. So that was an example of something you do not want to copy.
I mean, when you look at the barrier to entry, right, to participate in the
financial barrier,
it is a huge financial barrier. I mean, just about $14,000 for an application fee,
Yes.
right? That's just to file, in that process. And then what I was able to kind of follow was when you looked at the setbacks, you looked at the zoning regulations, it really put a premium on real estate properties that kind of fit within.
Yes.
And so you had some retailers, even prior to receiving a license, bidding, positioning, buying out businesses.
Well, they incentivized to try to get ahead because it was essentially first come, first serve once licensed, and there was not enough locations to fit the need.
So when we're talking about that equity and that inclusion, I mean, you'd have to be fluid. $500,000.
You're looking
$1 million. What are we really talking about?
You're looking at several $100s per square foot to renovate your location, staffing costs, inventory costs that are several $100,000. You're looking at $1 million investment to open up in the city of Pasadena a retail location. That's definitely a question.
So when we're in that social equity, I mean, because I don't think you really hit it directly. I mean, we're talking about the impact and the reaction to the war on drugs, right?
Yes.
Which disproportionately affected African American men, Latino men, and they've been excluded from even participating in this process.
And even with inclusion now, there's a barrier of entry that is difficult to overcome due to the financial needs and the ability to acquire a location. And also, if you look at the licensing scheme, it catered towards previous operators. So you're looking at a system that needs to be bifurcated, where individuals can be identified as social equity individuals and then provided the opportunity to apply. I believe instituting a position where they must maintain 51% ownership, it provides an ability for them not to be trapped by an investor or be put into a position where they didn't really see up ahead the true costs and they would slowly get diminished. I think that there should be 6 additional licenses in the city of Pasadena on top of the original 6. If you look at what David Reyes had initially said, he said that the city could handle 14 storefronts. There's 445 on and off-site liquor stores, and on one street there's 13 on Colorado. So I don't see where 3 dispensaries is sufficient, and I also think that there's a huge job loss and there's a big opportunity to create institutional wealth.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean, I've visited Varda when it first opened around that time, just to kind of check out what's all this new place. I've visited places in Colorado, Napa. I mean, various different places, and I mean it's a great experience, in terms of like as a user or a consumer, right? But the public kind of has this idea that these places are going to be havens for crime and debauchery, and
when they're actually the most regulated businesses in the state. We're forced to follow a metric program that follows the plant from seed to sale. We are on an annual renewal basis, so you are penalized, and the cost of entry and the value of the license makes it kind of unrealistic to be concerned that these facilities would become, an opium den or like a bar that's open all night with people leaving drunk and getting into their vehicles. So it's a definite misconception with the industry.
Yeah, what I've seen, in terms of customers, are mostly older white people. Just keep it real.
Soccer moms, individuals looking for pain relief. There's a various myriad of consumers. You have your individuals that are looking more towards health and for relaxation. You have individuals that are looking to just experience, and it's no different than I believe, the way alcohol is regulated in certain standards, because you have the BCC, which is essentially a subsector of the Alcohol Board of Control, which took many of their former employees. So there's a misconception across the board, and it's being hidden behind this mask of voter intent.
I haven't been able to confirm this officially, right, from the city, but my understanding is that the police department has the ability to monitor in real time the actual storefronts.
Yes, depending on what city you're in, a lot of the regulations have provided that the police department have closed circuit access to the cameras, similar to here in the city of Baldwin Park.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do they do that for bars or the grocery store or the liquor store?
Yeah, it's just another example of kind of fear-based policy that I think is the narrative that I think needs to change. There needs to be programs that establish the ability for individuals to break into this industry. That's why I'm so excited about the facility here in Baldwin Park, because we're essentially a bulk processing facility. So we'll do what, private labeling, white labeling, and we actually do the co-manufacturing or co-packaging. So it provides individuals the opportunity to create products and try to get into the space, which is going to be there's a barrier of entry that hopefully we can help with some of the financial aspects.
What's being done at the federal level? Because obviously with the scheduling of cannabis and regulations at that level, and I know recently jurist Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court jurist Clarence Thomas, kind of spoke, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but essentially the laws are just antiquated. What's happening, from an advocacy standpoint at the federal level?
I believe we're very close, and one of the key indicating factors is the fact that some of the large institutional banks are kind of off the record, letting some of their higher net individuals know that they're comfortable with property ownership and loans where those were not really inherent options.
Oh man.
I guess I wasn't moving.
Motion light.
Yeah, but essentially, if you look at what Chuck Schumer's been saying and the way that the banking industry has really been laying out their future regulations, I feel that we're very close, and I think that that's a really good thing, because it kind of eliminates the property owner's role, which has been really a way for institutions to be a step removed from the plant, but also monetize the license. So I think that with banking and other institutional abilities, it'll create a pathway for social equity individuals to be able to get funding, because the licenses are inherently valuable. Mm-hmm. And if the bank is willing to back it, now we have really a game changer.
Yeah, so there's no SBA loan essentially to go open a cannabis store.
No protection loans and nothing.
Okay. We got just a few more minutes, Shaun, before we got to get out of here.
It goes fast.
It does, man. It does. And you and I we can keep going further down this rabbit hole. But again, you've been a strong proponent for social equity. Just right. Recapping, what's your ask? Like, what's the play? What's happening? How can people be involved?
What we're looking for is for the people to speak. At this point on the 15th, there is, I believe, a special meeting at the Ed Tech Committee where they're discussing solutions for the current licensed individuals on how to provide a pathway for them to find locations. And I believe that a pathway should be provided for more than just that. And it's the perfect time to add an inclusion of some form. I believe that they should double the amount of licenses, and they should be 50% equity licenses. There's individuals that have been impacted based off the fear-based policy. And if you go to Pasadena Equity, you can see a little bit about the ordinance. We're at the position now where, based off the city's response, we are prepared to unveil our ballot initiative. And we're really excited to push this forward.
So you think it's going to take you gathering signatures, going directly to the voters, and allowing them to make a decision again?
I believe that the intent at this point is to show that the voter intent was not properly defined. And if the city does not want to use their power to amend, which they've clearly instilled, and it's interesting to me because
well, hold on. Let's be clear. The council is what you're saying has the power or the authority by the charter,
yeah,
through a majority vote, 5 votes, to amend what the voters have said. And then the other option would be you taking it to petition and then placing it on the ballot, which wouldn't be until what, next year sometime?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. It would be, I believe, in the general of 2022. However, we're at a crossroads now where it doesn't seem right for the city to provide additional pathways for the individuals licensed, but not a pathway for local inclusion.
Okay.
As you can see in the news, one of the individuals has already sold their license before even opening. So it's one thing to say you're going to act and provide, but it's another to actually do so.
And so, just so I'm clear, you're proposing that the city double the number of license to 12.
Yes.
And then half of that additional 6 or 50% be made, or a pathway be provided for some sort of social equity.
Yeah, for local residents through a form of a social equity amendment requiring 50% of our employees to be residents, and it would be a bifurcated process so that there would not be a requirement of finding real estate. As you know, in order to make any of this possible, they're going to need to reduce the setbacks. So
sure.
I think that the setback reduction being a topic at this time creates a very strong pathway.
So we only have 2 stores open here in Pasadena right now. Varda, which is almost as far east as you can go in Pasadena, a half a mile in any direction, and you're in multi-million-dollar neighborhood. And then just east
on the outsides are going to be operating anytime soon. So there's a huge demand, and the city could create literally hundreds of jobs and recoup millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really no setback or detriment towards change at this time. I think that ironically their intention was for a slow rollout to see how everything happened and then to address. So in reality, we're kind of at that stage.
Are the current shops and or retail locations, are they on board with this, or do they see it kind of as it would reduce market share because only 2 shops in town?
Well, I think a forced monopoly isn't good for anybody. I believe that the operators in the city are good individuals, and they're about expanding the ordinance or expanding the regulatory scheme and expanding cannabis in the state. So I personally have nothing but amazing things to say about Varda. They run a great organization, and I think that we just need to add inclusion, and we're at a perfect time.
All right, man. We're hard on time. We got to get out of here. Appreciate you, taking some time and coming and talking with us.
Of course.
And I certainly wish you the best of success in your efforts. Whether you succeed or not, I'm a big proponent of advocacy and individuals using their voice. So again, thanks, Shaun. My guest has been Shaun Szameit, and Shaun is a huge proponent. He's in the cannabis industry, and he's a big proponent of social equity here in Pasadena. Until we have another opportunity to speak with you, as always, agape.
Pleasure. Until next time.
Thanks, Shaun.